the one decision that simplifies everything, guided by the quiet guide. Most days do not fall apart because of one big mistake. They unravel quietly, almost unnoticed, like having too many browser tabs open in your mind at the same time. Each one pulls a little attention, a little energy, and none of them ever fully close. By the time the day is half over, you feel tired, not because the work was hard, but because your attention has been everywhere. What most people never realize is that the weight of a day is rarely created by effort. It is created by decisions made without intention. Tiny decisions, constant decisions, decisions you do not even remember making. What to check first, what to respond to, what to postpone, what to keep carrying mentally. And this is where it becomes dangerous. You can be disciplined. You can be ambitious. You can be genuinely trying to do the right things and still feel behind, not because you are doing the wrong things, but because the day was never simplified at the start. There is one decision that removes most of this friction. Almost no one makes it. And before we name it, it matters to understand why days feel heavy even when nothing is technically wrong. Because once you see that clearly, the decision itself becomes obvious. So what is this one decision? Most people begin their day by reacting. They open messages, scan notifications, and step straight into urgency. Urgency feels productive because it creates movement and activity, but it is a poor strategist. When urgency decides for you, the day fills quickly, and meaningfully, very little gets done. Here is the decision that changes that. Decide before the day begins what deserves your best energy, and let everything else be secondary. This is not about what you will try to squeeze in. It is not about what feels loud or demanding. It is about what deserves your clearest thinking, your most focused attention, your best energy. That one decision quietly simplifies everything else, because once it is made, dozens of smaller decisions disappear. When something appears during the day, you are no longer negotiating emotionally. You are measuring. Does this support the main thing, or does it pull energy away from it? If it supports it, you act. If it does not, it waits. This is why the decision works. It is not about doing less. It is about deciding once instead of endlessly renegotiating. Most people never make this decision. They wake up and let the day choose for them, and by midday they feel mentally tired, even if they have been busy. Not because the work was hard, but because their mind has been deciding nonstop. High performers approach the morning differently. They do not start the day asking what they need to get through. They start with a quieter and far more powerful question. What deserves my best energy today? That question removes friction before it appears. Let's take a moment to gather why this relieves mental fatigue. Mental exhaustion rarely comes from effort alone. More often, it comes from choice overload. Every small decision draws from the same mental reserve. What to open first? Whether to respond now or later? Whether to switch tasks? Whether to push forward or pause? Individually, these choices feel insignificant. Collectively, they drain clarity. You feel this not as stress, but as a dull heaviness, a slight resistance, a background tension that makes everything feel harder than it should. This is decision fatigue, and when it builds, the brain looks for shortcuts. It defaults to what is easiest, most familiar, or most immediately rewarding. This is why distraction increases later in the day, not because you lack discipline, but because your mind is tired of choosing. The one decision interrupts this pattern. When you decide early where your best energy belongs, the brain relaxes. It no longer treats every input as equal or urgent. Order replaces noise. Think about the difference this creates. A morning without a clear priority feels busy but scattered. A morning with one clear anchor feels demanding but clean. The work may be just as hard, but it feels lighter because your attention is no longer fighting itself. High performers are not calmer because they care less. They are calmer because they decide earlier. They remove complexity before it enters the system. This is why timing matters. If you wait until the day has already begun, urgency has already taken control. But when the decision is made before input arrives, even briefly, it becomes an anchor. Everything else orbits around it. You stop asking what you should be doing right now because you already know, and that alone frees more energy than motivation ever could. What exactly is this decision not? At this point, it helps to clear something up. This decision is not about rigid control. It is not about forcing yourself into a strict system or squeezing every minute for output. And it is definitely not about becoming emotionally detached from everything else in your life. Many people resist this idea because they think it will make them inflexible or cold. They imagine saying no to everything, ignoring people, or becoming obsessed with one task at the expense of everything else. That is not what happens. The decision does not remove flexibility. It removes confusion. You are not saying that only one thing matters. You are saying that one thing deserves your best energy. Everything else still exists, but it no longer competes at the same level. This also means the decision is not about perfection. Some days will go exactly as planned. Many will not. Unexpected demands will appear. People will need you. Situations will shift. The value of the decision is not that it creates a flawless day, but that it gives you something steady to return to when things move. Without that reference point, every interruption feels like a failure. With it, interruptions are simply part of the terrain. It is also important to understand that this decision is not motivation. Motivation comes and goes. This works even on low-energy days because it does not depend on feeling inspired. It depends on having decided in advance. When people rely on motivation, they negotiate with themselves all day. When they rely on clarity, they execute quietly. This distinction matters because once you stop expecting the decision to feel exciting or dramatic, you allow it to do what it does best. Simplify. Now let's look at how this simplifies everything else. Once the decision is made, something subtle begins to happen. The day stops feeling like a series of competing demands and starts feeling like a sequence. You still do many things, but they no longer pull at you equally. For example, imagine starting the day knowing that your best energy belongs to one specific piece of work. Not the entire project, just the part that truly moves it forward. When emails arrive, you do not feel the same internal tug. When notifications appear, they register, but they do not dominate. You notice the difference in your body before you articulate it mentally. There is less tightness, less urgency, fewer micro-decisions happening in the background. This also changes how you handle delays. If something takes longer than expected, you do not spiral into self-criticism. You measure instead. Is the main thing still receiving the energy it deserves? If yes, the day is still aligned. Even outside of work, the effect carries over. Conversations feel less rushed because your attention is not split. Breaks feel more restorative because they are not filled with guilt. You are not constantly calculating what you should be doing instead. This is what simplicity actually looks like in practice. Not fewer responsibilities, but fewer internal conflicts. When people say they want focus, this is often what they mean. They are not asking for intensity. They are asking for relief from mental friction. The decision provides that relief by acting as a filter. It quietly tells the mind what matters most, so everything else can take its proper place. And once that hierarchy exists, the day stops arguing with you. Having now understood the points made so far, why does this approach work psychologically? There is a reason this decision has such a noticeable effect, and it has very little to do with motivation. The human mind is not designed to hold unlimited open loops. Every unresolved choice, every pending decision, and every unprioritized demand occupies mental space. Even when you are not consciously thinking about it, you experience this as mental noise, a sense of being busy without feeling clear, a background tension that never quite settles. Psychologically, the brain is constantly scanning for what deserves attention next. When everything appears equally important, that scanning never stops. The result is fatigue that feels disproportionate to the actual work being done. This decision changes that internal environment. When you decide early where your best energy belongs, the brain stops treating every input as a potential priority. It does not have to reevaluate constantly. It already knows what matters most. That reduction in internal scanning is what creates relief. People often describe this as feeling calmer or more focused, but what they are really experiencing is the absence of friction. The mind is no longer fighting itself. You can notice this most clearly in moments that would normally derail you. A message comes in, a new task appears, something unexpected interrupts your flow. Instead of an immediate emotional reaction, there is a pause. That pause is not discipline, it is clarity. The brain has a reference point. It can compare instead of react. This is why the decision feels stabilizing even on demanding days. You are not relying on willpower. You are relying on structure that was created before pressure arrived. And structure, when it is simple, is deeply calming to the nervous system. Let's next visit how high performers protect the decision. Making the decision is only the first step. The real difference appears in how it is protected. High performers do not assume the day will cooperate. They expect interruptions. They expect demands. They expect plans to be tested. Because of that, they do not protect the decision emotionally. They protect it structurally. They create small, practical boundaries that reduce the need for constant self-control. For example, they decide in advance when their best energy window begins and ends. During that time, access is limited. Messages wait. Meetings are avoided where possible. Attention is reserved. Outside of that window, flexibility returns. This approach removes the need to feel guilty. You are not saying no to everything. You are saying yes to one thing, at the right time, with full presence. Another way high performers protect the decision is by accepting trade-offs early. When you decide where your best energy goes, you are also deciding where it does not go. They do not fight this reality. Some things will be delayed. Some things will be done adequately rather than perfectly. Some things will wait until tomorrow. This acceptance is crucial. Guilt is one of the fastest ways to fracture focus. When part of your attention is apologizing elsewhere, none of it is fully present. High performers close that loop. They know what they have chosen, and they make peace with what they have not. Even when the day changes, the principle stays the same. If something genuinely important interrupts the plan, they adjust without abandoning clarity. The question does not change. Only the context does. What deserves my best energy now? Because the decision is internal, it travels with them. It does not depend on a perfect schedule or ideal conditions. It adapts without collapsing. That is why their focus appears resilient, not rigid, not intense, just steady. How to apply this decision tomorrow? The power of this decision depends less on effort and more on timing. If you wait until the day has already started asking questions, urgency will already be in control. Messages will be open. Inputs will be flowing. At that point, the decision feels reactive rather than grounding. The decision works best when it is made before momentum begins. That might be the night before, when the day is quiet and the mind is clear. It might be the first few minutes of the morning, before any screens are opened. The exact moment does not matter nearly as much as the condition. It needs to happen before the day starts demanding answers. When you make the decision, keep it simple. This is not a planning exercise. It is not a to-do list. It is not a performance contract with yourself. Complexity weakens it. Ask one clear question. What deserves my best energy today? Not the most tasks, not the loudest demands, not what would make the day look productive from the outside. Best energy. Then answer plainly. One sentence is enough, sometimes even a few words. This deserves my best energy today. Once the decision is made, let it settle. You do not need to keep repeating it or reinforcing it. It works best when it sits quietly in the background, acting as a filter rather than a command. As the day unfolds, you will notice moments where the decision does the work for you. Something appears. You compare instead of react. You feel less internal debate, less emotional pull. That is how you know it is working. You are not forcing focus. Focus is emerging naturally because the mind is no longer confused about what matters most. This changes the way the day ends. Most people carry unfinished attention into the evening without realizing it. Not unfinished tasks, but unfinished judgment. Questions like, "Did I do enough?" or "Should I have handled that differently?" linger long after the day ends. That residue weighs on the next morning. This is where the decision quietly reshapes how the day closes. When you have been clear about where your best energy belongs, the end of the day becomes easier to assess. You are no longer evaluating the entire day. You are checking alignment. Did the right thing receive the energy it deserved? If the answer is yes, the mind registers completion, even if other things remain undone. That sense of completion allows attention to release. You notice this as mental quiet, less replaying, less internal commentary, more actual rest. High performers end their day deliberately, but not dramatically. They mark progress in simple ways. Sometimes it is writing one sentence. Sometimes it is acknowledging effort internally. Sometimes it is simply recognizing that the main thing was honored. That small act closes the loop, and closed loops restore energy faster than productivity ever could. Over time, this creates momentum that does not rely on intensity. Days begin lighter because the previous day ended cleanly. Decisions become easier because clarity has already been practiced. The cycle reinforces itself. You stop waking up mentally behind. You stop carrying yesterday into today. You begin to feel a quiet continuity between days, not because life is easy, but because your attention is no longer fragmented. What this changes about how you move through life. At this point, it should be clear that this was never really about productivity. It was about authorship. Most people do not struggle because they lack ambition or discipline. They struggle because their attention is constantly being claimed before they choose how to use it. The day decides for them, and they spend the rest of their energy responding. This one decision restores something subtle but powerful. It gives you back the feeling that you are moving from intention rather than being pulled by urgency. You begin to notice changes that are not immediately measurable. You speak with more calm because you are not mentally rushing ahead. You respond with less emotion because fewer things feel equally important. You work with more presence because your attention is no longer split. This is why people who live this way often appear steady under pressure. Not because they are naturally calm, and not because their lives are simpler, but because they decide earlier. Early decisions protect later strength. The decision also scales. On quiet days, it keeps things light. On demanding days, it keeps things grounded. On chaotic days, it gives you something stable to return to. You are no longer trying to control everything. You are choosing one thing to honor fully and letting the rest organize themselves around that choice. Over time, this builds trust with yourself. You begin to believe your own intentions because you see yourself follow through on what matters most. That trust changes how you approach challenges. You stop forcing momentum. You start moving with it. Quiet discipline replaces constant effort, and that is a far more sustainable way to build anything meaningful. Closing reflection. Take a moment now and notice what has shifted, not in how much you plan to do, but in how the day feels when you imagine holding it differently. This was never about doing more. It was about deciding better. You saw how one clear decision reduces dozens of others, how clarity placed early protects energy later, how effort feels lighter when it is aimed, and how days stop arguing with you when attention is no longer divided. None of this requires intensity. None of it demands perfection. Some days you will forget. Some days things will move faster than you expect. That is fine. The value is not in doing this flawlessly. It is in returning to it when you notice yourself drifting. Even one clear decision, made consistently, changes how everything else behaves. That is how quiet discipline works. It compounds without noise. It strengthens without strain. It moves you forward without burning you out. Carry that with you. Decide once. Let the rest fall into place. If this helped you slow things down, even slightly, that is enough. You do not need to change everything today. You do not need to decide what comes next. If someone you care about could benefit from this moment, feel free to share it with them. Not to fix them, just to offer perspective. And if this resonated with you, you can leave a quiet thumbs up or a comment. It helps this space grow and reach people who are building quietly, consistently, and seriously. If you would like more moments like this, focused, grounded, and steady, you are welcome to subscribe and return whenever it feels right. This is Quiet Grind Daily, where self-improvers reset, calm mind, consistent action, guided by the quiet guide. Come back when the world feels loud, or stay for more in the next quiet moment we share.